Hello and welcome to Healthy Living. Coming up on this edition, we're going to be talking about alcohol, drugs, smoking, dieting, eating, sex. What do those things have in common? All of those things and many more you can be addicted to. That's what this show's about, addictions. So stay with us, you don't want to miss it. Hello and welcome to Healthy Living. I'm your host, Tammy Thompson. This edition of Healthy Living is on addictions. What is addiction and how do you deal with it and live with it every day, whether you're the addict or whether you're living with someone who's an addict or just a friend? What can we do about it? Here to talk about that with me is Dr. Dick Lovell. He is the Chief of Substance Abuse Operations for Four Rivers Behavioral Health. Welcome.
Thank you.
Well, I just want to start out and talk a little bit about you. How did you get into dealing with substance abuse prevention and dealing with people who are addicted?
It was a mistake. I just got my degree. I got a job at a university in Louisiana, and before the semester started, the department head got us all together, all the faculty together, and said, who wants to teach course A, who wants to teach course B, who wants to teach this course in substance abuse? And of course, nobody volunteered. Well, he asked then, who knows anything about substance abuse? And sort of by mistake, I said, well, I worked with a couple of teenagers one time who had a heroin addiction. Well, you know enough, then you can teach the class. And this was back in 1973 when most of the kids in college were using more drugs than anybody you can think of. Certainly more drugs.
More than they were studying.
More than they were studying, certainly more than I had ever even thought about. And so they knew more about drugs than I ever thought about knowing. And when the semester was over, it was very clear to me that I didn't know anything about the topic. And so I went off to a special school at the University of Oklahoma run by the National Drug Education Program to learn about drugs. And so I started teaching this class on a regular basis at the university. I worked in the field when I was not teaching in direct service. And probably when I learned the most, I was working in Alaska, working with the Eskimo population who have a terrible alcohol problem.
Really?
And I worked there for 7 years with that population in remote areas in Alaska. And probably that's where I solidified all of my information. It not just became book information, but it was applied information. And I've been doing either teaching and or direct service for about 33 years now.
So you know a lot about it.
Well, I don't know if anybody would say they know a lot about it. We know some things about it. There's a lot of things we don't know.
Right.
But we have good hints, we have good suggestions, we have ideas that lead us to believe certain things. And that's kind of the way we work at it at this point in time. And it's like any other...
That's all you can do.
Well, it's like any other body of knowledge. You gain a little bit, you gain a little bit, then you find out that what you thought you knew isn't accurate, and then you modify it, and you just keep working at it.
Right. Well, I know that you've at least probably heard several myths and stereotypes about addiction. And some of them that I came up with, and I'm just going to toss them out there to you.
Okay.
Tell an addict, someone who's addicted, if you wanted to quit, you could. You could just stop right now. If you really wanted to quit, you could. True?
And to some extent, that's probably true. It's almost like with any other habit. If you want to stop, change badly enough, you probably can. Now, it's kind of like, I explain this kind of like I explain a marathon. Is a marathon simple? It's very simple. You just have to put one foot in front of the other for 26 miles. Is it easy? No, it's not easy. And will there be mistakes along the way? Maybe hundreds of mistakes, but it can be done. It's not a question of can you do it or can you not do it. It's a long process that takes constant vigilance and constant adjustment. And you can't expect any more than you could expect someone who is 450 pounds who decides they're going to lose weight. Can they do that? Yes, they can. When they sit down and everybody else is eating a birthday cake for their birthday, and they know that they ought to leave that cake alone and ice cream alone because that's not part of their regime to lose weight, can they do it? Yes. Is it difficult? it may be monumentally difficult to do it. And they may have to use all kinds of strategies and techniques to keep themselves from eating that birthday cake and that ice cream. But it can be done. So the answer is simply, yes, it can be done, but it's not just the easiest thing in the world to just turn it on and turn it off.
And depending on what you have the problem with. Depends on, some people don't have a problem with drugs, or they don't have a problem with alcohol or sex or whatever it may be. And for them, it's hard to understand how someone can be addicted, how that can happen.
Part of that problem is because we don't generally understand the chemical background of addiction. And I personally believe that no one really is addicted to ice cream or cake or marijuana or alcohol or cocaine or methamphetamine. They are addicted to the chemical messengers in the brain that activate the pleasure centers of the brain. These are chemicals, so it's proper to call them substances. But when we take cocaine, for example, cocaine causes these messengers, these chemical messengers in the brain, to leak out and activate the pleasure centers of the brain. And they don't just tickle those pleasure centers, they explode those pleasure centers so that the rush of intense pleasurable feelings occurs in ways that almost can't possibly be duplicated in real life.
And that can be with drugs, alcohol, but it can be with food.
Of course.
Anything. But we'll get into that. First of all, I want to come back to the stereotypes.
Okay.
And here's the stereotype that I came up with. People who are addicted, addicts, they're poor, homeless, people who bring this on themselves. Doesn't happen to rich people and people who are, higher up the economic ladder. Doesn't happen to those people.
Well, that is a myth, and it is something that people in general think. And when they do, probably what's happening is they forget facts that's at their fingertips. For example, we have a president right now who has a daughter who has drug problems, has had drug problems. I don't know the president's financial situation, but I would say that by normal standards, he would be called a rich man. He's certainly a successful man. He comes from a successful family. His father was a president. So we're talking about someone who is in upper class of our society. His family has addiction in it. And so, although that's just one example, certainly it belies the myth that only the down and out, the poor, the neglected, the weak,
the lazy, people who don't have any determination in life at all.
Exactly, that they're the only people who have the addiction. And the reason that that's true is that the same reason is that cancer, high blood pressure, doesn't affect only the poor, only the weak, only the people who have no determination, no motivation. It's a disease. It attacks the physical components of the human body and the mind as well. And that doesn't discriminate. If you have certain biological properties, characteristics, you can very easily become an addict, regardless of your station in life.
Well, you mentioned cancer and disease. When you talk about that, I mean, it's almost like, well, they had cancer. That's not their fault. You can't help that you get cancer. But when you talk about alcoholism or drug addiction or gambling addiction, are those diseases too? Because we don't have the same ideas about that. The stereotype is, well, they brought it on themselves. Is addiction a disease?
Well, let's say yes.
Okay.
Okay. 1957, the World Health Organization, the American Medical Association declared that alcoholism, for example, it was a disease. So yes, it is a disease.
How is it a disease?
It has a prognosis. It has an origin. I'm sorry. We start with an origin. It's a cause. Okay. There's treatment. There is a progression of the disease. We know what the disease will do as it progresses. We know what will happen if treatment intervenes in that progression process. There's a prognosis. There may or may not be a definitive cure. Just like for cancer, just like for heart disease, just like for sugar diabetes and epilepsy. Those kinds of chronic diseases, we don't have any real solid understanding of all the different types of cancer and the reason why certain cancers develop in some people and not in others. Smoking, for example.
Now see, that smoking is not against the law.
No.
So you can smoke and buy your cigarettes, and
But it causes cancer.
it does cause cancer, and people can be addicted to smoking as well. But it's not, you're not looked down upon because you're a smoker.
Right.
You're looked down upon if you're an alcoholic. People look down if you're addicted to drugs, or gambling, or sex. I mean, people look down on you.
Right.
And why is that? I mean, why do we take one over the other and say, well, this one's worse? You know, smoking is okay. Because people may not see that as a real addiction, maybe?
Well, for sure, but you think of cancers, we can't do anything about it.
Right.
You know, the reason I brought up smoking originally is because smoking causes cancer in many cases.
Right.
And there's a lot we can do about it. We can put the cigarettes down. But even a person who knows they have cancer of the lungs, for example, who is a smoker,
Right.
they often do not put the cigarettes down. They often keep smoking. I played golf with a guy not too long ago who had oxygen, carried portable oxygen tanks around with him. He had emphysema. He was dying of emphysema. Emphysema caused by years and years of smoking. He had the oxygen in his nose to help him breathe as he smoked a cigarette.
Now, I understand, see, and that makes no sense. And oftentimes people will get to that point and then they'll stop, and then it's too late.
Right.
But I was at the, years before my father died, we went to the VA hospital, and there was a man who had a stoma, who had cancer of the esophagus and all of that. And he was smoking through his stoma. He couldn't smoke because it wouldn't go through.
Wouldn't go through.
So he was smoking through his neck. And I just thought, I don't understand. I don't understand what moves you to do that, and you just can't stop.
Well, there's two different questions you're asking. Say, what moves him to keep doing it, and he just can't stop.
Okay.
There's two different. He could stop. And who knows why a person actually decides, what motivates them to continue to do that in the face of catastrophic consequences. We really don't know that. Many times, a person gets to that point and they say, well, why should I stop?
Right.
I'm dead anyway. But we don't know. That has to be answered on an individual basis.
Right.
But could they stop? The answer is obviously yes, they can. But again, I keep falling back to the point that I think is terribly important. It can be done, but it's not an easy thing to stop. These addictions are a lifelong habit. People don't begin to become they begin to become addicted over a period of years. And usually by the time we notice that the addiction has a full hold on an individual, the symptoms are so strong that to stop means you have to start becoming a left-handed person after 15 years of being a right-handed person. Now, the example that I use for myself to help to understand, I'm right-handed. I brush my teeth with my right hand. Now, if I wanted to, or if my arm was broken and I had it in a cast where I couldn't use my right hand, I would have to brush my teeth with my left hand. But it would be very difficult. It would be awkward. I've tried it before, and I don't get the same easy motion with my left hand that I do with my right. That's because it takes years of practice to train those muscles and the brain control of those muscles to move in a fluid motion.
Addiction's the same way?
Addiction is in many ways the same way. I've done something over and over and over again for whatever reason. I mean, the reasons may vary, but it becomes a habit. And now, in order to stop it, I've got to retrain and learn totally different habits that counter this particular habit. Now, again, going back to the toothbrush. If I were to brush my teeth tonight with my left hand, after 2 or 3 brushes, the temptation will be just overwhelming to switch back to the right, because I know I can do it that way. It's easy, it's comfortable, I know what to expect. We like comfortable. We like knowing what to expect. We like being in control. This makes my world orderly and predictable, and I know what to expect. And when I know what to expect, I can plan to get the kind of desired results that I want.
So you do the same thing with a drink. I can go without it, but I'm shaky. I'm nervous. I can't function. And I know if I take that drink, everything's going to be okay.
Take this show. I've heard many actors and actresses talk about throwing up, being so nervous they couldn't stand up. Their knees were knocking, their hands were shaking before some performance. They'd take a pill, they'd take a drink, and it immediately calmed their nerves. Well, the next time they get ready to go on and make a performance, what are they going to think about? If I had that drink, I'd be really able to do a much better job. And for a while, they probably can. But what happens is the chemical processes take over. And the person can become, depending on the substance being used, the person can become biologically addicted, physically dependent on that drug. And when that happens, they start using more and more and more. Their performance actually deteriorates. But because the drug acts not just on their body, it acts on their mind, their understanding, their perception, their interpretation of what's happening becomes blurred and distorted. They think they're doing a wonderful job when in fact they're bombing, and they don't realize that they're doing a bad job. But they're calm, they feel comfortable, so they keep using it, and it becomes a habit for them.
And it's just a way to cope and to get through the next minute, the next day. We're going to take a short break, and we're going to come back and talk about if addiction is inherited, or if someone is predisposed to addiction, or if it's just something that everybody's just making up. So
right.
Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Healthy Living. This topic of this edition is addictions. What is addiction and how do you deal with it? And my guest is Dr. Dick Lovell, who is the Chief of Substance Abuse Operations at Four Rivers Behavioral Health. Is that right?
That's right.
I got it. I got it. We've talked about what addiction is. We've talked about kind of how it happens in your system. Is it just in the body? Is it a chemical thing in your body, or is it a chemical thing in your mind?
Both and. One of the things that we have just recently learned is that there are, just as there are conditions that occur when somebody is allergic to a food, they don't digest the food the same way, quote, normal people do. I had a good friend of mine, I mentioned I worked in Alaska for a while. The head of the community college up there was a man who was allergic to milk. And he was so allergic to milk that if he ate any food that had milk in it, or drank milk directly, even worse, he had possibility he could die. He had that violent a reaction to milk. Now, what that means is that his body chemistry, what he inherited from his mother and dad, said this is the way you will digest milk, is very different from the way I digest milk, because I digest milk fairly normally. But that same sort of process occurs with people when they take a drug like alcohol, like marijuana, like cocaine.
Okay.
That some people digest it, metabolize it differently than some other people. And when they do, some terrible things can happen. For example, one of the things that happens when you drink alcohol is that if you're normal, that alcohol is broken down into acetaldehyde, which is a chemical very similar to formaldehyde, a toxic poison. Anybody that's ever drank any at all will recognize that when they feel bad the next morning, they don't know this, but it's because they have residual acetaldehyde in their system. They got a poison in their system that makes them feel bad. Now, the body has a natural way of dealing with acetaldehyde, and that is it changes it into vinegar, water, carbon dioxide, and energy very quickly. Some people don't produce the enzyme that breaks down the acetaldehyde as in large quantities. So when they drink alcohol in large quantities, this acetaldehyde, this poison, builds up in their system. Other people produce lots of this enzyme. So they drink the same amount of alcohol, the acetaldehyde doesn't build up in such large quantities. The person who has the enzyme that breaks down this poison quickly and in large amounts doesn't have a hangover. They drink large amounts of alcohol, they wake up the next morning, they feel great, let's go do that again. The person who doesn't have the enzyme, doesn't produce it in large amounts, they wake up, they feel terrible. They're not going to go out and drink again. Drinking is not something that they see as pleasurable. So consequently, the person who can hold his liquor is very much more likely to develop a condition of addiction with alcohol than the person who can't hold his liquor, who has hangovers and finds that drinking causes him bad consequences. Mm-hmm. And so that's something that is chemical. It's in our bodies and we're born that way. Now, a person who does not produce large amounts of this enzyme, therefore they have the bad hangovers, could they become alcoholic? If they force themselves to, even though they felt bad, they kept doing it for some reason. My girlfriend just died, or my girlfriend just dumped me, and I want to drown my sorrow, so I just keep drinking, even though I know I'm going to feel bad. Could that cause some physical dependence? Of course it can.
But they don't have that predisposition.
Some people do not.
That other people have. And see, that's what people don't understand. I have drank in my lifetime.
Right.
It's not something that I desire, that I crave, that I have to have.
Right.
So it's not something that I could become addicted to. But someone else in my family takes one drink. And can they become addicted with one drink, or is it just a continuous thing? Because what someone told me is, if you're an alcoholic, one drink is too much, and 1,000's not enough.
That's because you have this condition, and it doesn't matter whether you drink or don't drink. That's the way I am. I have, for example, a liver condition that causes my body to produce an excess of cholesterol. I eat really well. I watch my diet. I exercise pretty vigorously every day. I still produce too much cholesterol. Now, if I didn't do the things that are good for me, would my body continue to produce excessive cholesterol? Yes, it would. Does the exercise and the diet help? Of course it does. And the same thing is true with someone who is alcoholic or who has an addiction to some drug. They can modify and control that condition, or they can just let the condition run riot, depending on how they respond to that condition. But the condition doesn't go away. So once you're an alcoholic, if you have that condition, there's nothing you can do to get rid of that condition. That's the chemistry that you were born with. Can you do something about that condition? Well, of course you can.
But it's very difficult.
But it's hard.
Is that with any addiction? Because we've talked about alcohol, but is it with gambling? Is it with sex? Is it with drugs? Any kind of addiction, that chemical need to satisfy something?
Remember that I mentioned to you about the brain chemistry, that I don't think the addiction is with the chemical itself. It's because the chemical activates these messengers in the brain that activate certain parts of the brain and say, I like that. Well, so does gambling, so does watching the internet, so does eating food, so does exercise, so does work. All of those kinds of activities can become very addicting because
Workaholics.
Exactly.
They're addicted to working.
Right, because that particular activity activates some part of their brain that is terribly rewarding, terribly pleasant to them.
And no matter what the consequences, no matter their families are falling apart because they're not at home, or their families are falling apart because they're on the internet looking at pornography all day, whatever it is that you're addicted to, the consequences do not matter.
Well, yes, that's right, and no, it's not right.
Okay.
You can't say for whom, and you can't say for how long. But for many people, for a long period of time, those consequences do not matter. And you mentioned earlier, what are the signs that we look for to determine
How do you know if you're addicted?
Right. Well, that's one of the signs. If you persist in doing something that is causing terribly negative consequences. If I took a hammer, put my hand down here on the table, if there was a table here, and I hit one finger, the consequences would be pretty painful. I mean, I got a broken finger. It doesn't. I can't use it. Now I said, well, let's do the next finger. Well, that'd be. You'd think, well, that's crazy, but that's what addiction does. You see what you're doing, and you decide, I don't care that the consequences. I'm going to do it again on all the rest of the fingers. So one of the things that you look for is a person is doing drinking, using drugs, watching pornography on the internet, gambling, and it's losing their job, they're losing their family, they're losing their self-respect. They give up all the activities that make them the kind of person that was very likable and sociable and respected. They keep doing it, even though the negative consequences are there. And everybody else around them sees, don't you understand that that's ruining your life? They're the only ones that at that point in time don't see it.
They don't that was a question. Do they realize that they're giving up everything?
At the point in time, no, they don't realize it. They are rationalized. I mentioned earlier, if Brad Pitt were to be scheduled to be on this show, and you're a happily married woman, and you didn't know who it was that was going to be on the show, and he shows up here and it's like, he's not only good looking, he's
beautiful.
100 times more attractive in person
Right.
than he is when you see him on TV. And he says, well, how about after the show we go out and have a cup of coffee? And you say, well, sure, that's fun and nice. And he's flattering and he pays you attention. And you say, well, there's nothing wrong with this. And then he's going to be in town for a month. And tomorrow he calls you up and said, you know, I really enjoyed the show. How about if I come over and talk about maybe we do another show? And you say, well, there's nothing wrong with that. And little by little, he starts paying more and more attention to you. You can easily rationalize that I'm not neglecting my husband. I'm seeing him during work time. I'm not doing anything wrong. We're just talking. We're just friendly. And it progresses little by little by little. And pretty soon, you can find yourself in a full-blown affair. And at each stage of the game, you would be saying to yourself, well, there's nothing wrong with this. Even at the point where you're actually having an affair, you could be saying,
my husband won't know, right.
He won't even know, and so no harm done.
And he'll leave town in a couple of weeks, and then it'll be over, and then I won't do it. And
exactly.
so it's with any type of thing, whatever it is, you can legitimize anything in your head.
You can make it sound reasonable. Now, obviously, at some point in time, these consequences can build up to the point where you say, I can't take it anymore. Mm-hmm. And so when you say that they ignore these consequences, yes, they do. And some people continue to ignore them till they die. Other people look at it around and say, you know, I've lost everything. I can't keep on like this. Or they get to where something is far more important to them than the drug itself or the use of the drug, and they say, I can't lose this, and I need some help. At which point, they can get in treatment and they can get well.
Places like the Friedman Center and the Four Rivers Behavioral Health Center.
Right.
Places like that here in town. One last question. We have a couple of minutes. I have some people in my family who are addicted, and they've been in and out of jail most of their lives. And one of them has had some consequences in his life that I can almost understand why he's become addicted to substances. Right. Another I don't really understand. But I've said to myself, you know, they could stop if they want, they could, you know, but I've come to realize that they really truly are addicted. Now, they've been in jail. They've stopped for 5 or 6 years, however long they've been in there. And then when they get out, they go right back. If they can quit for 5 years, why can't they just stop? Then, what is the propensity to just keep going?
Well,
get right back into it.
It goes back to, at least my understanding of it, goes back to the reason that I mentioned earlier that people start using is because of the way their body chemistry is to start with. Many people, their body chemistry is such that they feel depressed and they don't have any zest for life. They feel poorly all the time, not motivated, not energetic. Now, that's not a good way to be. Most people like to get up and I'm happy, I feel good, I want to get some stuff done. But if you weren't that way and you took a drug that made you feel that way, ooh, that'd be kind of nice. Okay, now if that was a condition, that depressed condition that you inherited from your mother and dad, and there's nothing you could do about it, that's the way you're going to be most every day.
Okay, but this is a sibling of mine. I don't have the same predisposition. He can,
Sure.
even though we have the same parents and the same...
You have is a brother you're talking
brother.
about.
Yes, it's a brother.
Is it possible that your parents can give birth to a male and a female?
Yes.
Well, that comes from genetics. Everybody is not exactly
So he
the
can
same.
get it and I don't.
Sure. The genetics of that are pretty easy. If you remember Mendel and how you have recessive genes and dominant genes, that's pretty easy to understand that some in the same family have conditions that another person does not have.
Totally different. He and I are totally different.
But if he's in that jail, he's not using because he doesn't have access to it. But his body chemistry hasn't changed. It's just like a diabetic. If he is in a hospital, he's forced to take care of his diabetes, and he doesn't have a problem.
Right.
When he gets out, now he's got freedom. Now he can eat chocolate cake and ice cream and everything with sugar in it that he shouldn't.
And get right back in trouble.
But if his condition was such, like the depressed condition where he's feeling badly, and he knows that if he takes that drug, he's going to feel better.
For a short time is better than not at all.
Well, he doesn't think about it as for a short time. As long as he takes the drug, he's going to feel better.
No matter what the consequence. And that's what someone who is not addicted does not understand.
Right.
No matter what the consequence, I'm going to do this.
Because the consequences to me, who feels good normally,
Right.
I don't have, I mean, think about if somebody had a migraine headache all the time, and you could take a drug, and that migraine would go, you felt wonderful. Why would they possibly take this drug that would make them addicted? I don't understand it because I don't have a migraine headache. But if I had a migraine headache, I'd be after that pill because I don't want to sit around all day long fighting this pain. Well, this is the same kind of situation as someone
It's
who...
a craving. They have to...
Because I don't feel normal without it. I need that to feel normal. Now, that's what makes it hard, is because a person who's giving up that drug has to find out how to feel normal without the drug, and that takes a lot of work.
Well, we're going to take a break, and we're going to bring on two people who are trying to do just that. They're trying the hard work. They're trying to get their lives back on track. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Healthy Living. The topic is addiction, and I have two new guests with me. I have James Burk and Jeff Hester, both recovering addicts who have come to share their stories, and I really want to thank both of you for that. And again, Dr. Dick Lovell, who has dealt with substance abuse and substance abuse prevention for over 30 years. And we're just going to jump right in to talk about what did addiction do to your life? What were you addicted to, and how did it take over your life? Whoever wants to start. Jeff?
Okay, I was addicted to cocaine, alcohol, basically any drug that was going around at the time was what I was addicted to. I did mostly crack. I don't know.
Anything and
started,
everything you said.
Yeah, it started by hanging out with people that did drugs. They were the popular ones. They, you know, the way I looked at them, they were the ones I looked up to, and so I just followed suit. Problems at home, growing up with a parent that was an alcoholic, had something to do with it. I believe part of it was from birth, my beliefs and my actions as I grew up. Yeah, it all had something to do with it, to be the person that I was that moment when I chose to do the drug. It all had something to do with it.
And so it just progressed from there.
Did
it start out slowly?
Total progression. For me, the first time I used, I could not stand up. And for me, it never got any better after that.
How old were you when you started using?
I was 14.
14.
I remember crawling in the house. And from then on, it never got any better.
Now, you knew you were crawling in the house. Was that something you wanted to do, or you just, the feeling that you had doing the drug was more important than what happened after?
What I had seen is I had seen people, the people in my little life, which was usually parents and other friends and family, they were all using. So to me, it was second nature. Now, I didn't know at the time when I started using, was I going to be crawling in the house? No, I did not think that.
Did you care?
After the first time, no. I did it again.
What about you, James?
Mine started out, I started probably sneaking and drinking because on both sides of my family were quote unquote bootleggers, and there was always alcohol around. So as kids, we used to sneak and drink, and it progressed from the alcoholism to the use of marijuana, from marijuana to the crack. And after the crack, it was just crack.
From there on out?
From there on out, 24/7.
So was it all you thought about? Did you think, was that just getting that drug?
Basically all I thought about was my next high.
And
Where my
whatever
next
you
high
had
was
to do to
coming
get
from.
it? Did anything
Any
matter?
Any length to get it.
Now see, would
Didn't
you
care
have done
who I
any,
hurt.
and when you say anything, I mean, would steal? Any of that?
I stole, robbed. It didn't matter. I had people that would pull up to me and ask me, could I get them some, take their money, never see them again. I'd steal from my mom, girlfriend, daughter. It didn't matter. I was just that far gone and didn't realize it at the time. But as it progressed, yes, people brought it to my attention, and I would see the different reactions that I would have to certain people, such as my parents. I would deny it, deny it. And then people in the streets, so what? I'm grown. I don't have to answer to you or nobody else. My mom and daddy know I get high. Good Lord see me get high. I'm not worried about you, the police, neither one. They're going to get me one day,
Because my brother is an addict, and so is my nephew. And my brother is in prison right now for methamphetamine. And, you said right there, I didn't care. It didn't matter, whatever. And I wonder if he was in denial. I don't have a problem. I don't have a problem. You have the problem. I'm going to do whatever I need to do to get this. And nothing else mattered. And he had that same idea that you have, James. If the police get me, I'm going to outsmart them anyway, because I'm not going to get caught. And even if I do, who cares? Because I need this. And I don't understand how that works. So just explain a little bit more, either one of you, that nothing else matters. To get across to somebody that nothing else matters. How do you?
For me, it was a sense of comfort. Because like I said, everything that I did growing up led up to me doing that first drug. So by that time, I was already there. There was no moment where I was thinking, guilty about it. I did it wide open from the beginning.
It was kind of normal?
For me, it was normal just as soon as I started. I mean, it was like I found, what I've been looking for. There's nothing missing no more the way I felt. It makes me whole. It makes me complete. And what happened was that making me complete enclosed me in a little walled up place to where nobody else could get in to help or love or care about me, because I would lie to them, con, manipulate, steal, whatever I had to do. And I would blame people that they caused me to do that, or because she didn't act right, I went out and did a bunch of drugs and spent all our rent.
It's her
money
fault
on it.
because
Yes.
she doesn't love me or dumped me, like he said earlier. You have excuses that you make so that you can, whatever it is that you can say, that's a good reason to go out and do that.
Anything's an excuse.
Yes.
Anything. I know for me, when I always use the excuse that you don't care about me, because if you did everything that I do, no matter what it is, It's always negativity coming from you. Nothing ever positive about what I do. So why do I care about how you feel? You know, because I've got my God. All I have to do is go get me another hit.
Was it
All
God
my
to
troubles
you?
is gone.
Was it God for you?
Basically, yes.
How about you? Everything to
For
you?
me, it told me when to get up, how to do it. It was my lover, my friend, my confidant. Everything revolved around them drugs. There was nothing that I did that did not involve a drug, one way or the other.
From the moment you woke up to the moment you went to sleep,
It was all
about the drugs.
And what changed for you? How did it change to where you're not in that same condition now?
Things got so bad that you can only hide from the truth for so long. And then eventually you got to take a look at it. And that's what my addiction done to me. It got me to a point to where I know it inside me, either I do something about it or I'm going to end up dead or locked up for a long period of time, which I didn't want to do. And I really didn't want to die, you know. I wanted to live, and that's basically...
How did you get to that point, though? How did you get from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to sleep, everything's about the drug? What's triggered and snapped in you that said, oh, this is enough is enough? What happened?
For me, I was just sick and tired. You know, I was tired, physically, emotionally, just beat down. I was tired. My daughter came to me, you know. She came to me crying and asked me, what am I going to do with myself? She was asking me that question about me. And, you know, it took maybe a few more days, a week or so, for that to actually sink in exactly what she was asking me. But after I thought about it, thought it through, what she was asking me was, are you going to wake up and be my father today or what? You know, and my daughter's like my right hand to me.
She has replaced your drug?
Yes. Yes. My mother, you know, I was spoiled brat by my mother when I was young. And I lost my mother, my father for so long. And once I finally got, after the 13-month incarceration the first time around, my father and I had gotten back close. And for the first time in my life, he told me face to face that he loved me and he was proud of what I was doing for myself. And you know, that made a great difference in my life. But yet and still, losing him after hearing him say that, you know, it hurt me so bad because I couldn't understand why my father would leave me like that. You know, I went back out, and of course I went back to the penitentiary. And
Because you talked about, you know, for you, I didn't want to go to jail. I didn't want to go to jail, and I didn't want to die. And you have been in jail for your drug addiction, and then you get right back out. And we talked about that in one of the segments. You are clean for the period of time when you're in jail, and I know that you could still get drugs in jail if you wanted them, probably,
Oh, exactly.
because
Yes.
there's no doubt about that. So I think that's a little misconception that you go in jail and you're clean. And you talked about that happened to you. What changed? Because it's hard to understand, because you're telling me it was everything, I couldn't do it, something snapped.
If I could say it like this, there comes a point in time when you get tired of lifting yourself up out of a gutter where water is rushing and trash and debris is flowing by your head. You get tired of picking yourself up out of that gutter. And when we say sick and tired, that's what we're talking about.
Sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Exactly. You know, I'm tired of doing the same. I'm tired of, you know, passing out in front of family when they're having Christmas and them throwing the coats on you. You know, I'm tired of being the one that everybody looks down on when I go somewhere, or a family get-together that they don't want you around.
Mm-hmm. Because people try that tough love. You know, I'm going to separate myself from them, and I'm going to try to teach them a lesson, and I'm not going to have anything to do with them. Maybe that'll do it. And then from what you've said, well, they don't love me, so I'm just going to go right back. And I'm going to do that. That's my lover, my confidant, my family.
But James said something I think that was very important, and you see, tell me if I'm on target here, but you had for a long time been people telling you you were no good, nothing but negative coming at you, and your father said he loved you. I don't know if that was the very first time, but it sounded like somebody's telling you something good about yourself, that maybe you could believe in yourself a little bit, that there was something good in you. Did that start a spark that started other people telling you there was some good things, that maybe you started doing some good things?
Yes, and as far as the going back out after losing him, that was just one that I had, I knew nothing else but to get high,
right,
to cover up my pain, and as I was going to state a few moments ago, while I was incarcerated, yes, I've seen guys get high all the time while I was locked up. And it was hard not for me not to get high with them, but I knew what I wanted. I had made up my mind that I wanted to stay clean once I was released, only to get out 4 days before my birthday this past September and go back out again. And it really scared me because I didn't know what to do from there.
Right,
You know what I'm
where to
saying?
go.
Because deep in my heart and my mind, I really did not want to use. But I had went back to the same environment, the
Right.
same old people, places, and things.
And tell me if this is good advice. Tell my brother said that same thing. He wants to get out. He's not going to do it anymore. He's clean. And it's like he has to try and make new friends. He has to hang around different people because it's such a temptation if he doesn't. Is that good advice?
Yes.
Is that something he could do?
Because I thoroughly believe in this. If you go to a barber shop long enough, you're going to get a haircut. If I'm around drugs all day, I'm going to do drugs. I am an addict. I would do drugs than eat or sleep or hold a child.
You'd
I would
rather-
rather do drugs than that. But for me, I had to change those people, places, and things. I had to learn to live with different friends, because at my age, there weren't no friends left. They'd either went to prison for long terms, or they died. It wasn't that, oh, well, friends, I got to go inside now and do a few months. I'll be back in a little while. It wasn't like that. It was like, well, Bob, he's dead, and Terry, he's dead, and this guy's got 20 years, and the next friend's got 20 years.
Wow.
So it
See,
wasn't.
my brother the same way. He has 20 years because he's just been an addict for as long as I can remember. He's done drugs. Something that we would talk about, and James, you kind of hit on it, that you've tried to quit. You've tried to quit. How many times have you tried to quit and it didn't work?
I've tried numerous times to quit, but the realistic thing about it is you've got to want to quit in order to quit. And when you want to quit, you will do the necessary things to quit, such as go to make meetings, get a sponsor, work the steps. I guess probably the first thing one should do is to reach out for help. You can't get help if you don't reach out for it. You don't look for it because you're not going to want it. All you're going to want is your comforter. You know what I mean? All you're going to want is your pillow, and that's your drug of choice.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I knew until I got incarcerated. Until I was incarcerated and introduced to Narcotics Anonymous and AA.
How many times did you try to quit, Jeff?
Me previously, before, I would say, I don't know, it's so numerous. I can tell you I've been in numerous treatment centers in a period of years. Every time I went, I wanted to quit. I just was not willing to do what it took.
What's different this time?
For me, the things I was running from inside that I was scared of and I really didn't want to deal with, I'm dealing with them now. I'm not running from fear.
You
And
talked
I've
about that
done
your
that.
drug made you complete. What makes you complete now? Because you're
For
in
me,
treatment
it's-
now, and you're...
For me, it's a loving, caring presence that calms me and soothes me and helps me and gives me strength and guidance.
But you're leaning on that every day, and this is the question. I'm so, proud of what you guys are doing, and I'm so happy that you're here because you're stepping out and you're talking about this for other people who are watching. What do you still have an everyday struggle? Because that's what happens with whatever it is. I like to eat, I've lost weight, that's great. 6-7 months from now, I may be 20 pounds heavier again because I'll be right back where I was. It's a daily struggle not to do that for me. Is it something that happens every day that you think about those drugs and you make a conscious choice not to do it?
For me, it's every morning when I get up, I pray. And in that prayer, I ask care and guidance for the day and to do someone else's will besides mine. Because all I know how to do is get high, basically. At my age, that's about all I learned. I did bunches of jobs, but what I learned how to do efficiently was get high. Today, I have to ask other people, a sponsor, other members of the 12-step group to help me and guide me. Because I don't know, and I will harm myself unintentionally and anyone else around me.
Because even with all these things, you still want to. Do you still want to, James? Even with the treatments that you're doing, you still want it?
At times, I guess basically that feeling will never go away. But I have to keep reminding myself of where I came from, and stay around positive people,
Right.
positive places, and positive things, and that just like I say, keep praying every day to just keep that away from me, to keep my mind off of that, because if I should happen to let my guard down at any time,
You're back.
I'm gone.
And
doubt
I was
about
going to ask you, is that normal? I mean, is that the way it goes, Dr. Lovell?
It's pretty typical, but I wanted to say something I think that needs to be said. You complimented them on the courage to be here,
Yes.
and I want to reiterate that. But they look to guidance from some other power, and it's appropriate that they do that because, as Jeff said, that's all I know how to do. And James said the same thing. I deal with a tragedy, I deal with a problem. Well, the way I deal with it is to go get high. But one of the things that you both have said that you haven't said out loud is it takes more than just praying and asking for help. They have to do a lot of hard work every day to take those prayers and the answers to those prayers and put them into practice. And they deserve a lot of credit because I know how hard it is and how hard they worked to get to where they are.
Because like
And
you said,
it takes their effort, and they need the pat on the back and the credit
Absolutely.
for taking the advice of other people. The AA community might tell them what to do. They're the ones that have to go out and do it. And
you're the
they
ones with
deserve that
addictions, and
credit.
you're the ones with how hard it is. And you have to fight every day to do that, and that's very courageous, and it's hard work. But like you had said, Dr. Lovell, it's, they may or may not have been predisposed. I mean, they're addicts. But that predisposition, you had alcoholics in your family, you had alcoholics in your family. It was the environment that they were a part of. And like you said, it's mind and body. It's both. And they have to learn how to deal with that. Any advice, I'll start with Dr. Lovell, and we have about 4 minutes. Any advice for someone as far as seeking treatment and the places maybe here locally that they could go to get that help?
Well, James said it. You have to reach out for help. People are forced into treatment, and we hope that when they get there, we treat them in such a way that they will see, hey, maybe there's something over here that I can get, and something I really want, but I didn't even want to admit that I wanted it. They have to want it. And the people out there, I don't know if these guys would agree with this or not, but I think deep down, every person who has an addiction doesn't want it. They don't want to live a life in the gutter like Jeff said. They want what everybody else wants. But as James said, they don't know how to get it. And so they've got to be honest with themselves and say, yes, this is what I do want. Can somebody out there help me? And yes, these people can help them. The AA community can help them. Our treatment centers can help them. And if they will reach out, I think they will find what they're looking for.
We have about 2.5 minutes left. James, any advice to anyone watching?
Just, I don't know, I guess, just reach out, ask someone. There's always someone around that knows where a meeting is.
Right.
And
you have to make that choice. It's a choice.
You have to make that
and you
choice.
have to be willing to fight.
You have to be willing to go to any length to get what the people in those rooms have.
Would you say that you have to go to as much length to stay clean as to all the lengths that you went to get the drug, the stealing, the robbing? You have to go that far and further.
Personally speaking, you must go further.
Yeah.
I know I do.
What about you? Any advice?
Mental health centers. I would suggest treatment centers, self-help groups, anything and everything. Pastors, friends, ask for help. Because I truly believe if you're really looking for help, you will find it. I don't believe no one is turned away. I've never seen it.
And and from experience, can you be rehabilitated? Can it happen?
Yes, it's very much so possible.
Even if you fail many, many times, and people who get down and out and say, I failed, I'm not even going to try to quit anymore. You all have failed. Can it be done if you really just keep trying?
It's very much so possible.
Never give up.
Never give up.
Always
Well,
keep some hope.
I appreciate all of you being here, Dr. Lovell and James and Jeff. If you need any help, if you think that you may be addicted, the Friedman Center is at 442-7121, and the Four Rivers Behavioral Health Center is at 442-8039. And you do have a hotline at 1-800, I believe it's
592-3980.
3980, 592-3980. You've heard it from the people who live it every day. Reach out, get the help you need, and even if you fail, try and try again. And maybe this time, it'll work for you. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate all that you've done. Please join us again next time on Healthy Living.